Welcome to JND Creations. I'm Jax, and today I'm going to tell you how JND Creations started, why it started, and what led me to making these videos for you guys to watch. I guess we've got to get into it, eh? Yeah, I guess that's it. Let's get into it. So, JND Creations, how did it start? Well, I guess I'll kick off by telling you JND Creations is not my initials, as a lot of people seem to think. JND stands for Jax, Nat, Dex. And at the time of starting JND Creations, that was my family. Me, my wife, and our son. The idea of JND Creations was founded in the Ronald McDonald House here in Perth, Western Australia. We lived in that house for 404 nights from the time that our son was born through to the time that he was allowed to leave and come home with us. At the time we found out that Nat was pregnant with Dex, we were living in Alice Springs in the middle of Australia. Nat worked for Commonwealth Bank and I was the branch manager for Armaguard, which is a cash in transit business. We were pretty excited at the prospect of having a little boy. We were both in good jobs, we were in our own house, we had great friends, and life was just pretty sweet all in all. We had an ultrasound when Dex was 12 weeks old, which took way longer than it should have. When the sonographer stops scanning and leaves the room and doesn't come back for ages, that's when you start to worry. We were taken through to see a pediatrician, and it was at this point that we were told that our son had gastroschisis. What the f is that? Well, gastroschisis is a condition where around 10 weeks of age, the embryo doesn't receive enough oxygen supply, and at 10 weeks of age, your abdomen wall is forming. So gastroschisis is when the abdomen wall doesn't fully close, which allows the organs to come out and grow on the outside of the body. In our case, all of Dexter's bowels were growing on the outside of his body. We were told immediately that this was something that the Alice Springs Hospital would not be able to handle, and Dexter would have to be born in another state. After a few weeks of deliberation, we decided that Western Australia was the best place for us to come, and we started making arrangements for that. At 16 weeks, we had another ultrasound which revealed that he had bilateral talipes as well, which is clubfoot in both feet. Now, if you don't know what clubfoot is, I'll put a picture of it up here, but it's basically where your heels don't face the ground, they face the sky. Our 16-week scan was the last scan we had in Alice Springs, and from that point forward, we were flying to WA every 4 weeks for ultrasounds at King Edward Memorial Hospital. We faced other battles through the pregnancy, and the specialist in Perth requested that from 30 weeks we reside in Perth so that he could scan Dexter every 7 days. So at 29 weeks, we packed up our brand new car, drove from Alice Springs all the way down to Perth. We were lucky enough to get a room at the Ronald McDonald House, and we proceeded to go to the hospital every week for ultrasounds. Little did we know that it would only be 2 weeks later, at 32 weeks, that Dexter would decide that he'd had enough and he wanted to come out. Before I go any further with this story, I do want to give you guys a warning. I am going to have images coming up on the screen, some of which may be quite graphic. I apologize if they make you feel uncomfortable, but this is the story of how JND started, and this is how it started. And before Dexter's diagnosis, I didn't even know something like this was possible. So see how you go with the photos. If you don't like them, you can skip over them, or perhaps maybe this story isn't for you. So Dexter was born, he was thrown straight into a plastic bag with his organs on the outside. Nat didn't even get to see him after he was born. He was wheeled straight out of the room and taken to another room in the hospital where he had lines put in, and he waited for an ambulance to then take him to the Princess Margaret Children's Hospital because he required immediate surgery. This was the 12th of July, 2017. Now, if you want to know a more in-depth story about Dexter's trials and tribulations, we actually do have a Facebook page for him called The Tummy Tales of Dexter Doyle. Feel free to head over there and check it out. Right at the start of this journey, we were posting updates almost daily on what was happening, what surgeries Dexter needed, and just what was going on day to day. So if that story interests you at all, I encourage you to head over and check out the Facebook page, because I will probably skim over most of it in this video. So 12/7/17 is when this started. It wasn't until the 17th of November that Dexter was actually released from the neonatal intensive care unit. He'd had 9 surgeries at this point, heart failure 4 times, he'd been on ECMO for 8 days. Being prem, he started the journey at 1,790 grams, so he was tiny and he had an epic battle in front of him. But we were over the moon when we finally got to take him out of the NICU and back home to Ronald McDonald House. It was requested that we stay in Perth for a further 2 weeks after he was discharged before we contemplate heading back to Alice Springs. Everything went to plan and we got back to Alice Springs, which was fantastic. We got back to our normal life. 3 months later, we had our first bowel obstruction. Now we knew Dexter was prone to this. He had an ileostomy and a microcolon that really just did not work. What we weren't really aware of was the fact that Alice Springs couldn't handle that. So Dexter got flown to Adelaide. Adelaide couldn't handle that, so he got flown to Perth again. Meanwhile, I'm in my car chasing him around the countryside. Now, for anyone who doesn't live in Australia, that may not seem like much. I'm just driving from state to state, but just for a little bit of awareness, it took me 17 hours to get from one edge of WA to the other on that drive. That wasn't even leaving one state. That was 17 hours in a straight line from east to west. A long bloody time. Dexter ended up needing more surgery and he ended up having 12 surgeries in his first 12 months of life. We were living back in Perth at Ronald McDonald House. We were out of work. Our days were literally spent 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day at the Children's Hospital. Now, I've always been good with my hands. I've always been into arts and that sort of thing. And I actually started watching YouTube. I never really took YouTube seriously before this point. I always just used it as a bit of a place to learn if I wanted to jump on, watch a video on how to do something. But I actually came across Nick Zametti's videos. I didn't know what a lathe was before this point. I'd done a little bit of woodwork, but absolutely nothing serious. I'd made a few bookshelves that they're pretty good. We still got them in the house now, but they're basic and they're out of pine. But that was the extent of my woodworking knowledge up until that point. So when I wasn't at the hospital for 14 hours a day, I started watching YouTube, watching Nick Zametti, and I come across other channels like the Dreadnought Woodshop, Jim Overton, John Malecki, Brad Rodriguez from Fix This Build That, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I loved watching this content. It just drew me in. I really loved what these guys were making. One night Nat turned to me and said, "You spend all this time watching this stuff. Why don't you do it? Like, why don't you make your own videos?" So I jumped on Facebook Marketplace. I brought my first lathe for 200 bucks, which you saw for the first 18 months of me having this channel. I set it up in my dad's backyard, and for a couple hours on a weekend every couple of weeks, I just learned how to turn. I propped my phone up, I filmed it, and I made Facebook videos. We settled on the name JND Creations. I wanted to put creations in there as opposed to something along the lines of woodworking because I didn't want to tunnel what I was doing with JND Creations. I wanted to have that availability to not be stuck just doing woodwork. So we settled on JND Creations, kicked off the Facebook page, and I started releasing weekly videos. Nothing like they are now. Trust me. What I was doing got a little bit of traction. I started getting some orders in for a whole range of things, mainly serving boards, but I even went to the extent of making hand-designed baby clothes for one order. They got sent over to the US, which was pretty cool. I was building up momentum for the point that we got back to Alice Springs and I had access to my computer again, and I planned on doing a YouTube channel. Fast forward to the end of 2018, Dexter's just been released from hospital. We are heading home. We get to the border of WA and South Australia, and he goes downhill fast. It ended up being the norovirus that took him out, but we were that remote that we had no phone signal. I had no signal on my CV radio, and I was flying down the highway with my hazards, my high beams flashing, trying to reach the little hut that they sit at the border where the people come out and check your cars. Even though we're one country, we're not allowed to pass through these imaginary lines with certain fruits and stuff. I don't know if you guys are the same in America, but I find it really weird. Anyway, we made it to the border. They were able to contact an ambulance for us. The ambulance took Dexter to an emergency air pad where the Royal Flying Doctors come and pick him up and took him back to Perth. It was at that point that we just gave up on our dream of going back home. We started looking for rentals in Perth and figured our entire life needed to be uprooted and brought here because it was just too risky to take Dexter back to Alice Springs. I flew back to Alice, packed up all of our stuff, shipped it over here, and a couple of weeks later, we got this house. Now, anyone who's been here from the start knows that this workshop did not start like this. The very first video on this channel is a video of me setting up this space, and it looks vastly different. I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably vastly different as well, because as much as I knew I had to be confident talking to a camera, and I thought I was being confident talking to the camera, I most certainly was not. These, a fair while ago now, probably 6 months ago. Now, I'm told that this is plumwood. it's pretty cringeworthy. But once we moved into here and I had my own space, I started treating JND like my full-time job. I was in here every day making videos. I had the ambition of kicking off my YouTube channel with 52 videos in 52 weeks. That doesn't seem like much, but when you're doing things that I'm doing, like making projects, it's a lot to cram in a new one every week and then film it and then edit it and all of that goes with it. Anyone who does YouTube knows what I'm talking about. 52 videos in 52 weeks is just utter madness, unless you're doing videos like this where I'm just talking to you. That wouldn't be too hard. What made it even more crazy was we actually went over to England during this period for 5.5 weeks, so I had to get 6 videos ahead to keep my schedule coming out while I was away. That was just utter madness. It was full on. Now, amazingly, as vast as this workshop has become compared to how it started, it hasn't really cost me a cent. It has completely paid for itself. I won't lie, come Christmas and birthdays, the things I ask for are generally to do with this workshop, but the money I make has been reinvested into upgrading everything from the machinery to the camera gear so that I can make better content for you guys. And I think we are achieving that. I don't know about you, I would love to hear your opinion down below, but I certainly think the quality of the content on the JND Creations channel has vastly improved. Fast forward to the present, we've been in this space for about 2 years now. Dexter is doing really well. He still undergoes weekly therapies, physio, speech, different pediatricians. He still has quite serious issues with his feet, but he's a happy boy. He loves life. He's always smiling and running around. And as a parent, you really could not ask for much more, especially from a little boy who's been through such a hard start in life. But now, we have a second little one as well. That's right, Dexter got promoted to the status of Big Brother only 12 days ago at the time of filming this. So we've now got little Torvy Shay as well, so our family has grown. I've had a couple of people who have been around with JND Creations since the start actually ask me if I'm gonna be changing the name, because obviously it's not just Jax, Nat, and Dex anymore, but I don't think I'll be doing that, even though that's how the name originated. JND Creations is the brand of this channel and of the products I make now. So I think it may cause some issues if I were to rebrand at this point in time. I might just have to kick off another channel with Torvy's name in it so she doesn't feel left out. I might be doing that soon, guys. Possibly. You heard it here first, we'll see. So through that whole journey, JND Creations really was a way for me just to channel my creative energy and almost zone out from the situations I was facing at that point in my life. We were at the hospital all the time. We were faced with extremely difficult decisions that I really don't think any parent should be made to make. It was absolutely exhausting. We had none of our friends around. We were out of our own house, out of our routine. For the first 12 months in WA, I honestly don't think we left the suburb that the hospital was in. So I found woodwork and it just gave me this amazing creative outlet for a couple hours every week just to zone out of what was happening in life and allow me to create something. And I fell in love with the passion. I absolutely love making. And that's making in general. That's not just woodworking. I get as much enjoyment out of filming and editing these videos for you guys as I do from actually making projects. And I've done that for a long time. All through school, I did a lot of filmmaking. Absolutely nothing up to the standard of what I'm doing now with the special effects and whatnot that I try and include in my videos. But I do include that stuff because I really enjoy video making. Dare I say, almost more than the woodworking. But that's my story, guys. That is how JND Creations started. That's where the name came from, why it's here, and why I'm doing this for you guys. My ultimate goal would be to make videos full-time because A, it would allow me to love my job, and B, it would allow me to spend more time at home with my family because my #1 role now is dad. Everything else, JND, work, it all comes second to being dad. And if I could do these videos full-time, I could be dad a lot more. So, I know this video was far from my norm, but a few videos ago I did mention a little bit about this story and I did say, let me know if you guys wanted to hear more of it. And I got a lot of comments saying, yeah, make the video. So here it is. Obviously, gotta keep you guys happy. On another note, if any of you guys are going through situations similar to what we went through and you've got no one around, please reach out. I know it can be hard and I know you can feel super isolated in those sort of situations. And if you need someone to talk to, feel free to reach out and have a chat. Okay, I feel like that was a really big D&M session. We haven't really gotten deep and meaningful on this channel before. I normally just jump around like a goddamn idiot and make random ass things. With that being said, let me know what you think of this style of content. I mean, if there's anything else you want me to talk about, I'd be more than happy to make more of this style content if you're going to enjoy it. I got a lot of random knowledge floating around up here. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you think. I really appreciate you sitting through this story, hearing about the origins of where JND comes from and why it means so much to me. I'm going to cut to the typical YouTuber thing right now. There's another video queued up just here that I think you're going to enjoy, and one down here that YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy. Look after yourself, guys, stay safe, and I will see you very, very soon.